All right, hello. I think we are live. As usual, I'll wait for the confirmation. If you can see okay, hear okay, then please write it in the chat. I'm Gil Shear. Today we're going to talk about the connection between the body and the soul. So hopefully you're excited. I'm excited. Give a few more seconds just to make sure that our broadcast is working well on both Facebook and on YouTube. Okay, great. YouTube is working well. Let's see, on Facebook, looks like it as well. Great. So feel free to ask anything about the topic or about Kabbalah if you want. Give it a few more seconds just to make sure everything's smooth and to give a chance for a few more people to join. Great. So the body and the soul. You know, it's a topic that I think all New Age methods address, of course, all religions address this topic. But what is really the connection between the body and the soul? I think you might be somewhat surprised by how Kabbalah treats this. Surprised in a good way. Well, maybe at first in a bad way and then in a good way, if you'll stick around for the explanation. Okay, hopefully that got you interested. All right, we'll give it a few more seconds. We'll make sure that everything is working well and that sound is okay, video okay. It looks all right. Yep, I think it looks good on both platforms. So I think let's get started. Welcome to Kabbalah Explained Simply. I'm Gil Shear, and today we are going to talk about the connection between the body and the soul. So first of all, I would appreciate it if you watch these sessions regularly and you like them. Then if you click the like button or the subscribe button or both buttons, that would be great. And also, if you can write where you're from and your name, if your username isn't your name, it'll be nice just to see the variety. You know, I can already see someone, Antibes from France, Jetser from the Netherlands. Yep, that's good to start with. Keep it going, Cliff from Massachusetts. All right, good. So keep that going, and we'll dive into it. But you keep it going. All right. So first of all, the title itself already makes some assumptions, right? Because what is the connection between the body and the soul? Then that title already assumes that we have a soul, right? So that's a serious assumption. And it's kind of a given. You know, we're basically taught that when we're kids. Most religions talk about having a soul. There is maybe disagreement on if it's just humans or animals. What about plants? You know, is the soul eternal? How is it connected to the body? So let's start off with the greatest misconception, and that is that we all have souls. So in fact, we don't. Now wait a minute, before you leave this broadcast with anger, saying, what is this guy talking about? He's saying I don't have a soul. How dare he? Of course I have a soul. I have a good soul. My mum told me when I was little. Stick around. Hopefully the explanation will give more meat to what I just said, right? So it's not exactly that we don't have, I mean, we don't have a soul, but we do have something. What is this something? It's the potential of a soul. It's the embryonic point of a soul, you could say. And every single person has the potential to develop it. But it doesn't mean that we start off with having it. So let's go back just a little bit back in time. Yes, you guessed it, 14 billion years back in time. Let's take a look to where it all began. So, maybe a little more room. All right. Okay, so why am I going back 14 billion years ago? Well, I'm actually going back before 14 billion years. However, I can't really give it a time because there was no time. There was only a thought, you could say, in a way. So what happened 14 billion years ago? For those of you who don't know, there was an explosion of energy, which later on cooled down, and expanded and turned into what we know today as reality and the universe and life, etc. But I want to go back even before that. That will help us understand what the soul is, where is it, and how it's connected even to our body, if at all. So in the very, very beginning, there was just a thought. This thought was a thought of, you could say, infinite fulfillment, infinite love, infinite giving. It's hard to imagine what it is because this thought is the exact opposite of what we are, of our own substance. So that's why it's difficult to even imagine what this kind of thought is. But this thought wanted to give its infinite fulfillment to something. So it created what we call a created being. Now this creation went through 4 phases, which are called the 4 phases of direct light. I'm not going to go into them now, so I'm going to jump over to the 4th phase where the creation of the desire was completed. Right, so this is phase 4. And then after this phase, there was a state where the light and this created being, at this point it's just called a vessel. It's not a human, it doesn't have a body, it's energy, you could say in a way. It's energy with a desire to receive. And the desire to give and the desire to receive, the plus and the minus, the giving and the receiving, they were in complete harmony. Like an embryo in the womb, that it's being completely nourished by its mother, getting everything it needs before it can even think about it or feel it or say that it wants it. It just is fulfilled and it's nurtured and it's in a state of perfection, you could say. A baby in a womb is beautiful. It's a state where we're born and our entire lives we just want to go back into that state, right? It's why, never mind. All right, so you could say that why did anything else have to happen after that? What was, so it sounds perfect. Why did anything change since then? So something did change, and it's not the topic of this lesson, but I'll just say it in short. Everything was perfect except for one thing. This created being, it didn't have an independent desire. It was annulled like a moth to a flame, like a baby in the womb, like an embryo in the womb. That's what it was. And in order to reach the full purpose of this force, which let's call it the creator, don't think that it's the creator that religions teach. It's not some bearded guy sitting up on top of us and looking if we're well behaved or not. Nothing like that. It's a force. We can also call it the force of nature. So this force of nature, it wants to bring what it created, the created being, it wants to bring it to its level, to ultimate fulfillment. And ultimate fulfillment has to be achieved through a certain level of independence. So in order to reach that, to bring the created being to that level of independence, what would you as a parent do if you want your child to be independent? You would take a step back, right? You wouldn't helicopter them like some parents do. You would take a step back and you would let them grow, make their own mistakes, fall, get up. You'll be watching them all the time. And if they engage in something they can't handle, you will step in. But as long as it's possible for you not to interfere, you will want to see how they grow themselves. And you might even set up all kinds of things, all kinds of challenges for them or seemingly obstacles because you want them to be independent. So in a way, that's similar to what the Creator did to us. And he distanced himself over 125 levels of concealment, which are altogether divided in 5 worlds. So in the worlds of Adam Kadmon, in the worlds of Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. And this over here is our world. So 125 degrees of concealment until at the end there was complete concealment. All that remained was what Kabbalists call ner dakik, which literally means, ner means candle in Hebrew, and dakik means very, very thin. So it literally means a thin candle, and what it refers to is that all that remained was a tiny illumination, a tiny bit of energy that remained from this upper force in this world. Let's call it the plus force. And all of the matter that it created, meaning it created simply a force called a will to receive, and this will to receive opposite of it, let's call it the minus. And these are the two forces that are the foundation of reality as we know it today. These are the two forces that stood at the very beginning of time, 14 billion years ago. Now, I'm going to jump ahead almost 14 billion years because I'm going to skip the whole evolution of the still billions and billions of years of just still evolving and until there was life for the first time around 4 billion years ago. But even then it was still kind of boring life. I mean, it wasn't boring, it was fascinating, but you know, it's just single cells. And they don't really do much. They just evolved more and more to vegetative and animate, etc. I'm going to jump to a time that's more relevant to us. Let's say about 200,000 years ago, right? What happened then? That's the approximate, that's the approximation to when Homo sapiens began, the thinking human. So the thinking human, that's us, that's our beginning. It had very simple desires in the beginning. What desires did it have? It had desires for food, right? It had desires for sex, for family, its clan, etc. These desires are very similar to desires of the animals, right? It's very simple animalistic desires, you could say. And if a person had these things fulfilled, then you could say they were fulfilled. They didn't need anything else. They felt, in a way, like the baby in the embryo. They had everything they needed, right? And then the desire kept evolving, and then we'll jump ahead a little more, so about 6,000 years ago, where the human desire, it went through another step of evolution, a serious step of evolution, where it started wanting not just bodily fulfillments like food, sex, and family, it started also wanting social fulfillments like money, like power, like knowledge, right? And then all of humanity started appreciating these things because the human desire started evolving with these things. So step one is food, sex, and family, and step two, money, power, knowledge. And this went on, this money, power, knowledge thing went on for a few thousands of years. Actually, it's very little time in evolutionary time. But as you might know, development is exponential. What we can see today in 10 years is probably equivalent to the development 100 years before that, and that was probably equivalent to 1,000 years before that with the Industrial Revolution, etc. So the pace, the derivative is always getting bigger. You know, that's how an exponential graph works. It goes like that, and then the derivative is constantly growing. So the pace of change is constantly growing. But it's not a maths lesson, so forget I said anything. Okay, for those who have maths phobia, no, don't draw a graph. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into equations. Whenever my mother, whenever she is exposed to Kabbalah, she always says to me, this is just for smart people. I don't understand how, you know, it's only for people who are smart, this Kabbalah. And then after a while, she studied a course, and then I think what she found was that it only seems that way maybe in the beginning with all these graphs and charts, and it's a very knowledgeable wisdom. There's a lot of knowledge here. But really, it's not directed at intellectual understanding. What it's directed is at the heart. That's what it's directed at. That was just a side note. Now I'm going to go back to the explanation. I just said that so you know that you don't have to worry really about remembering or, you know, taking notes. You can if you want, if it helps you absorb the material. But really, what I'm trying to convey here, and the wisdom of Kabbalah is trying to convey, is to communicate to an inner point that lies in each and every one of us. And that's exactly the point that we're going to talk about right now. So what happened after the desire for money, for power and knowledge of humanity? So the desire kept growing, it kept evolving. And at a certain point, recently, you could say, Kabbalists call this date 1995, although don't see it literally as the year 1995, it's that period of time. But you could say in our generation, what happened is that food, sex, family, power, money, knowledge are no longer enough. They're no longer fulfilling. We still need them, we still want them, but even if we get them all, we're not necessarily satisfied. Well, not everyone. Some people will be, but many won't. Many of you who are watching now will not be satisfied, even if you have all of that. And why is that? It's because the human desire is reaching a point of satiation. And that's this point over here. So it's not that it's not evolving anymore. It is evolving, but it's evolving in a different kind of way. It's evolving on a different dimension. And this dimension is a spiritual dimension that it's evolving on. And this evolution is the first time this desire within a person to find something beyond this reality, it's the first time that this desire appears. So it's a desire for the spiritual. Many people don't know how to give it a name. I didn't call it spirituality when I had this awakened in me. I didn't believe in spirituality or in God or in religion at all. I had this feeling that the world I see around me cannot be it, that this intuition that no matter what I do or what I achieve in this world, it will not be enough. It's not what I'm looking for. And many people have it sensed in them in different ways. When I started studying, I was with my girlfriend, who today is my wife and the mother of my 4 children, and we started studying. We were searching together, and she came to it from a slightly different angle, and each person comes to it from a different angle, but the bottom line is the same. It's a search for fulfillment that is beyond the level of this world. That's to put it simply. And the amazing thing here is that it's not a new desire. Although it seems new to humanity, to us, it's not new at all. It's actually very, very old. It's so old that it's before time itself. It's from all the way up here. That's where it comes from. So it's not only really old, it's also eternal, because it comes from a point before time, before space, before anything. And this desire that awakened in us now is pushing us for a new level of development. You could say it's like a caterpillar that is finished its first step of evolution, and now it has to become a butterfly. And when it does, when it's in that state of transition, then all its systems, internal systems, change. We spoke about this a few times. It's a beautiful example, because the reason why it's so relevant and beautiful is because within that caterpillar, when it begins its evolution to become a butterfly, then its systems start collapsing, except for a certain type of cell, which are actually like all the other cells, except for one thing. They identify this transition as a point of change, not as the end, but as the beginning of something new, and they're called imaginary cells. So I like that example because it is relevant for all those who have this point awakened in them, and they are also called imaginary cells in the system of humanity. So how is this related to body and soul? It's because when we have this point awakened in us, I'll stop with the drawings for a sec. So, and I'll take a look at some questions, which I'm sure you already have some. So, when we're talking about body and soul, we're talking about two different levels. The body is the physical, and the physical part of ourselves is, well, this is a protein. You can break it down to molecules, you can go further, deeper down and find atoms, or even deeper down and find electrons and neutrons, protons, and even go deeper down and find quarks, etc., and subatomic particles. But within this substance, there is no spiritual. You can go deeper and deeper in, but you'll never find spirituality in a microscope or in any device, in any scientific device, right? So that's actually two things that it means. It means, one, if there is a soul, which we haven't completely stabilized, but if there is a soul, it does not exist in the body. Okay, so that's one really important point. You can transplant your inner organs, your heart, maybe in the future, your brain, who knows, or parts of it, your limbs for sure. You can change all of that. That, of course, will have no effect on your spiritual development. You can even die, and your death will, your physical death of this body of yours will also have no effect on your spiritual development. Why is that? It's because this point that we call spiritual, which we spoke about having the potential to become a soul. So this point that awakens in a person, let's look at it like this. So this is just a point. We call it in Kabbalah point in the heart, right? Why do we refer to it as the point in the heart? Because in Kabbalah, heart, it resembles our desire for fulfillment. And the point in the heart is referred to a point that is on a different level of desire. It isn't looking for self-fulfillment on the level of this world. It is looking for self-fulfillment, but on a totally new level, on a spiritual level, right? That's what it's searching for. And that point, let's look at another page. That point has actually no relation, no connection whatsoever to the physical body. Actually, let's continue this drawing in a second. I want to take a look at some questions. All right, let's see. So, Sushi Smita is asking, good to see you again, Sushi Smita, I didn't see you last week. So she's asking, body is a way to reach spirituality, it's just a medium. Why can't we be without this physical body? That's a good question. Yes, the body at this point is, in a way, the medium. Kabbalists call this body, they call it a shirt, in a way that it's clothing the body. So they refer to physical death when a person dies and is buried, etc. Kabbalists refer to that as simply changing a shirt. So if I change a shirt, does that change who I am, my essence? The answer is no, it doesn't, of course. I'm just changing an outer clothing. So Kabbalists refer to the physical body as a shirt. And in Kabbalah, when we refer to body, we're actually, in Kabbalah, the word body means guf. And in Kabbalah, guf, it means the desire to receive. So, or you could say just the desire, actually. Just the desire in its raw form, without any form of intention on it. So guf means desire. And that body and soul, they can be connected, although this connection isn't referring to the physical body and soul. And this, by the way, is cause for a lot of the misconceptions about body and soul. Because in Kabbalistic texts, it sometimes says that the sparks came down and clothed in the body of this world. Well, that's a completely misinterpreted sentence. In the body of this world refers to a spiritual state, and the body refers to a state of the desire. And the sparks of the light refer to corrected parts of that desire. So it's talking about an integration of the desire to receive integrated with light, which actually just simply changes its intention. So it doesn't speak even a single word at all whatsoever, nothing about the physical body and the soul. So to go back to your question, Sushismita, I always have trouble pronouncing your name. I apologize. I'm terrible with names, but I hope I said it correctly. So while we're in this world, just to go back to your question, so we're over here, right? Let's call it, this is us. And let's say this is this world. And this is the spiritual. Okay, so what we have in this world is we have the body, meaning the desire. Let's call it the heart. And inside of that, we have a point in the heart. Now, over here, we drew it that this point in the heart, this spiritual desire within us, it actually came all the way from here, right? What happened up here? Up here, let's look at it from a different perspective. It's the same, but it's just a different perspective. It will give more depth. So what happened here is that there was a state called the collective soul. The soul of Adam Harishon. Now, what is this soul of Adam Harishon? Putting it simply, it's like a spiritual collective consciousness, meaning it's acting as a single unit, a single body. That's actually all that was created, a single soul. There weren't many souls created. Your soul, or my soul, or Yvette's soul, or David's, or Sushismita's soul, or Cliff's. No, there was only one soul created, that's it. And when we spoke about the upper force distancing itself from the created being, another way to look at it is that it shattered, it broke into pieces. This is what Kabbalah calls the shattering. And there was a whole process here of the shattering of the soul of Adam Harishon, and what we ended up having done in this world is pieces of this shattered soul. That's what we are. We're simply pieces of a shattered collective soul. Now, these pieces, where are they? Are they in my body? Can I find them here? No, of course not. You cannot find them. Your soul doesn't weigh 21 grams, like there's some movie that I think starts off with that they measured the body before and after death, and then it weighed this or that. 21 grams was the difference. So the conclusion was the soul weighs 21 grams. Of course, that's nonsense. It's simply gases exiting the body after it dies. So what we do have in us is we have a connection to the spiritual reality. We called it in the beginning ner dakik, this thin light. And it's a connection that is connecting us to, let's call it a different dimension. Okay? I don't want you, don't start imagining like Hollywood, like you go through a wormhole and come out somewhere else, because we're talking about a completely different dimension that you can't even imagine with your senses. So it's not something that you can say, okay, it just looks different or feels different or sounds different. No, it's a dimension that you can perceive with a sense which you don't yet have. So I know it's difficult to imagine, because try imagining a sense that you don't yet have. Try that. It's very difficult. It's pretty much impossible because you don't have it. So that's what we have. We have this connection between who we are and this consciousness of ours, of what we feel, because this consciousness, I think it's also pretty straightforward that if I change parts of my body, my consciousness won't change unless I harm my brain, and then it can affect my cognitive abilities and possibly even my personality, depending on which parts of the brain. But here we're talking about something that is completely above that, that's on a different plane of reality, that is from within our desire. This can also take us into talking about perception of reality, that the reality that we see outside of us is in fact just a big question mark. We have no idea what it really is, right? So you see something, you touch something, But all you know you're doing is that you're filtering something through senses that you have. But what is this actually thing? I don't know. It's just some form of energy. Although to me it seems like a blue pencil, or whatever it is, or these are very common today, alcohol gel. So to me this seems like something that I have use for, and that I can touch, and I put it on my hands, and I know it will kill the bacteria, etc. But really, what is it? What would a different animal see this like? Probably differently than I see it. So this brings a whole separate topic of what's reality and how we perceive it. The reason why it's relevant for this discussion is because when we interact with the world, we experience the world. Everything we experience is through our five senses. But there is this one point in us that isn't related to these five senses, and it comes from this part of reality. It comes from here, and it comes to you, and it comes to me, and it comes to each and every one of us. And it lights up from within. And then, because of this awakening, it's also clothed in our thoughts, and our feelings. So we can think about it, and we can feel it, and we can express it, and we can say, wow, I felt this, and this is amazing, or I found this wisdom, or this truth, or I found other people, and I connected with them. And all of this is eventually, it's felt in our senses as well. But it cannot be found in our senses. And it's difficult to emphasize that because it raises a question. The question is, okay, so it's a different dimension, it's unconnected to this world. But there must be some form of connection. Otherwise, what does it flow through? How is it at the end translated into my sensations and into my emotions, right? If it has no connection. So answering that is related to what I explained about perception of reality, that in fact the reality outside of us is a form of energy, and even this body of ours is simply something that's within our perception. So let's continue. A few more questions. Let's see what we got. So Emily is asking, so what are we? A soul or a body or both? So Emily, that depends what perspective you're asking from. This is just a body. That's all it is. I can switch it, I can change it, my cells change, they regenerate. I think every 7 years, all your cells have regenerated. So physically, who you are now has no part of who you were 7 years ago, because all of your cells have regenerated. So theoretically, you're not the same person, physically speaking even. So who are we? Well, this is a collection of cells which connect to become a living body, and that is not a soul. And we have within us, not within the physical body, but within our desire, we have the potential to develop our soul. And you might be asking, okay, so how do we develop our soul? So this isn't the subject of this lesson, but in short, it's very, very simple. So I'll mention it in just a sentence. And all you need to do is correct what is broken. And what is broken? This soul. This soul has shattered. Over here, this is the shattering. The shattering of this soul. And what are we? We are the result of this shattering. So I'm a shattered piece, and you're a shattered piece, and you are, etc. And all we need to do, if we want to rebuild this soul, is very simple. We need to connect these shattered pieces. And by connecting these shattered pieces, we rebuild the soul. And then we have a soul. And then that soul is eternal. And like I said, I can change shirts, meaning I can change my body, I can die, and it won't affect my soul. I'll be born again if I haven't finished the development of my soul entirely, and I will continue from where I left off. Okay, let's keep going. A question from Gabriela is asking, if we don't have a soul, how can we do a connection with the upper force? So I hope I already answered your question. I hope it was clear, but I'll just kind of mention it again. So Gabriela, we don't have a soul in the Kabbalistic definition of what a soul is. A soul, actually I didn't define exactly what a soul is, so let's define it. A soul is simply 613 desires which interact with 613 lights in a correct form. I know that doesn't mean much, and I know the number 613 might ring a few bells for some of you at least. It stems from the spiritual root of 613 desires and the correct relation between these desires of this vessel to receive with the light outside of it. That's the construction of the soul. Another way to think about it is, like I said, it's the rebuilding of the soul of Adam Harishon. So every one of these phases, you could say, is simply another layer of building this, is working with the desire to receive, with the intention in order to bestow. And that's a soul also. That's another definition of it. It's the same. And what does it mean, working with the intention in order to bestow? It means increasing the levels of connections between the souls of this world. David is asking, are the shattered pieces inside of me? Yes and no. Inside of me, it depends what you mean inside of me. They're not in your physical body, because as we said, there is no spiritual that is clothed in a physical atom. You can develop any devices you want. You won't be able to look in and find a soul. Here it is, there's the soul, let's measure it, no, you won't be able to do that. They are inside of you in a way that when you rebuild your soul, what you're rebuilding is this connection, and then you discover that everything is inside of you. There is nothing outside of you except for light, abstract light. That's all there is. Okay, let's keep going with some more questions. Let's see. Heidi is asking, are our shattered pieces like holograms of that larger soul? Great question, Heidi. That's a great question, and it has a lot of depth to it, and it also answers David's question to an extent. Yes, each one of these shattered pieces is like a hologram that includes 8 billion pieces in potential in that shattered piece. And all you're doing is you're expanding your perception to see everything that's outside of you to be something that's inside of you. And no, David, we are not abstract light as well. We are the exact opposite. We're the black point called the Malchut, which is the opposite of this light. And all it needs to do, it needs to build its correct relation to its upper 9 Sefirot, if we want to speak in Kabbalistic terms. And this correction between the Malchut and the upper 9 Sefirot is the construction of the soul, is the correct interaction between the created being and the creator. Deborah's asking, isn't spiritual quiet, gentle, and precious? It is. I don't know if quiet, but it's gentle, it's precious, it's perfect. It's put it this way, if everything has root and branch in this world, so the root of perfection is actual perfection. So whatever you imagine as perfection in this world, it's not really perfection. It's a shattered view of what perfection is. So imagine that, and imagine what perfection would actually be if you go to the root of it, its spiritual root of that term called perfection, where it's can't really imagine it, but maybe you can try. Let's keep going. Some more questions. Okay. Okay, another question from Emily. Can we say that we are a soul or a body or both? I always say I'm a soul. Well, I think I answered that. So if you're relating to your inner point in you, then you can say that you want to relate to that part of you, which is not yet a soul. It's a soul in potential, but you're free to relate to that, and that's fine. And I agree with you. I also prefer to relate to the eternal part in me, internal and eternal part. So absolutely, if that's what you value as important and that's what you want to appreciate and want to focus on, then absolutely, then you can say that you want to be a soul. Maybe not yet a soul, but that you want to be one. Jet said the Jagger is the spirit and undeveloped soul. Sorry, I don't really understand what that question means. If you can maybe reinterpret. Jana is asking, what about nefesh? Isn't it in the body? Nefesh is not in the body. Nefesh is part of a spiritual degree called Naran Chai, which means nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. And these levels called Naran Chai are simply levels, they're names which represent interaction between the developing soul and the upper force. So nefesh comes from the word nefisha, which is basically still. Ruach is similar. It's like wind. It's literally, it means wind, but of course here it means that it's moving. It's more evolved, etc. Let's see what else we got. Corinne Ezkenazi, I guess it's Ashkenazi, I'm not sure, but Corinne is asking, what's the point of existence without a soul? The flesh is the shell for the soul. To an extent, first of all, with the first part of your question, what's the point of existence without a soul? You're absolutely right. There is no point. That's the only point of existence, to develop our soul. That's what 14 billions of years of evolution have been evolving towards you now, Corinne, asking this question, seriously, asking this question and wanting to develop your soul, if that's what you want. And if not, then evolution will continue towards that point, because that's all there is. Remember we said in the beginning that the Creator is like that parent that wants his child to grow, so he takes a step back and he lets his child evolve. So with parents, we can make mistakes, but here there are no mistakes. Every single experience, every single incident you've been through in life, every single historical event that impacted you or personal event that impacted you, all of that was tailored especially for you, perfectly for you actually, and it has only one purpose: to bring you to a level of ultimate fulfillment, which actually means to build your soul, which actually means to be in contact with the Creator, which actually means to connect with other people. I know the last one sounds a bit different. Wait a minute, how do you bring in other people? Well, yes, if the only thing that's shattered is the collective soul, then the rebuilding of it is exactly that. It's rebuilding the shattered pieces. All right, let's keep going. Right, the second half of your question, the flesh is the shell for the soul. The better example, I think, is to use what Kabbalists explain it, that they say that the flesh is like a shirt on a body. So the body, in this case, would resemble the soul, and the shirt is the body. It's confusing how I just explained it, but in other words, if you take off your shirt and you change it and you put on a different shirt, that's basically how Kabbalists refer to the physical body in comparison to the soul. So if you die and then you get a new body, then that's fine. It's no biggie. Your soul is still yours. Whatever you achieved with it, you achieved, and it's not only that you achieved it, but it's significant. How significant is changing a shirt? Not very, right? So similarly, that's how Kabbalists treat the physical body as something that's relatively insignificant, that it's just a tool to have us existing in this world so we can discover our soul from it. Okay, Mary is saying, I really dislike people. I guess Kabbalah is not for me. That's actually beautiful, Mary, that you said that. You're probably actually even closer in that case than if you would say, yeah, I love people, because what does it mean that you really dislike people? It means that you recognize your ego that's inside of you, and this inclination towards connection is something that, even if we do have it naturally, which some people have an inclination for connection, that's not spirituality. That's not what Kabbalah speaks of. It doesn't speak of our natural tendency to be social people. Kabbalah is not for people who are social or introverts or extroverts at all, because Kabbalah is talking about something that's much higher. Kabbalah is for someone that isn't satisfied from the levels of fulfillment of this world, and they have this, you could say, gut feeling. It's just like a sensation inside that there is a different, higher level of reality, a deeper layer of reality, however you want to call it, something more, something eternal, that we don't just drop dead and disappear and everything's gone, but that there is something eternal, and the answer to what that eternal thing is, that's the wisdom of Kabbalah. So if you have that desire, Mary, you don't have to worry about anything else. You don't need any inclination towards liking people or disliking people. Building this connection that I described is an internal action, and Kabbalists in the past and today, they're not necessarily social beings or even having nice personalities, because Kabbalah doesn't deal whatsoever with the level of this world. So some Kabbalists in the past and also in recent past, you could find them as being short-tempered or not at all what you would imagine from a spiritual being, to be all, no, and there's no contradiction, because their personal characteristics are on the animal level. So my genetics, make me look like this and talk like this and act like this and know this or have this IQ or whatever, and that's my genetics, and it's not good or bad, it's just what I was given. And spirituality is on a completely different level. So it has nothing to do with any of your corporeal traits, even though in the beginning it might seem that way. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Let's see. Okay, Javier is asking a very practical question, Javier. How to get over the physical desires to achieve more spiritual connection. Okay, that's very practical, and I appreciate your question, and I value it, I respect it, because what you're expressing here is you're expressing an understanding of what your natural desires are. And like I said, it's not good nor bad. Every person has these natural desires, whether it's the beastly, animal natural desires for food, for sex, for having a family, or it's social desires, etc. They're not good nor bad, and Kabbalah says you don't have to worry about them. You don't have to restrict yourself or limit yourself or be, not eat or not have sex or not want to have a family or be a monk. You don't have to do any of that. Why? Because all these things engage on the level of this world. Kabbalah talks about a completely different layer of reality. However, what you're saying, Javier, is that you want to have more importance for connection. And that's beautiful. And that's exactly why Baal Sulam writes in his article, Freedom of Choice, where he discusses in depth about where we do and don't have freedom of choice. He points out to a single point of freedom. And he says that this point of freedom is choosing an environment. Because whatever you plant yourself in, whatever environment you plant yourself in, like a seed into the soil, that will determine what qualities of yours will come out, what desires you'll have, what wants you'll even have. And I think we can all agree with that naturally we're planted in a very corporeal, materialistic desire, right? If it's our workplace, commercials, ads, etc. I think I saw some research that we're targeted by 3,000 ads a day. If we're, well, maybe today less in COVID times, but when you used to, go on the highway, billboards, phones, 3,000 ads a day. And that's our environment, and that's what develops our desires. You don't suddenly want a new phone unless you keep seeing that you need this new phone or that your old one is no good. Or if people around you start buying it, you say, oh, wait a minute, I also got to get this phone. And these are not your desires. These are desires that come to you from your environment. So you don't need to get over the physical desires. You simply need to plant yourself in a desire that appreciates spirituality. And as a result, your importance for spirituality will naturally grow as well. So where is this environment? Well, I'm sure Rachel is going to post in the chat now a link to join Kabbalah. Kabbalah is our online learning platform where you can join like-minded people. Many of the students who are watching now, I'm sure, are from Kabbalah. And it's a great online platform, you could say online community even, of people who together want to evolve to spirituality. You'll find courses there. There are live sessions as well for the courses specifically. There's also a community further down for those who want. Anyway, that's if you want to grow your spiritual desire, all you need to do is you need to plant it in a spiritual environment. That's it. That's simple. Let's see what else we have. So Lightning now is asking, so we don't have to make physical connections with people. It's all spiritual intentions, right? In a way, theoretically, actually, you're right. Theoretically, you're 100% right. We have no need for any physical connection. I mean, I don't know what you refer to as physical. I mean, right now, we're connected. I mean, the fact that people are writing in the chat, that's also a form of connection. And you could say, I mean, it is virtual, but it's physical in a way that we're all connected now together. We're watching something together. We're communicating. We're answering. We're thinking together. We're doing all of this together. So this is required. I can't reach connection by going meditating on a mountaintop. No, that won't work. I'll just disappear in myself. And myself is simply a shattered piece of that soul. So in order to make connections, you do need other people. You don't need to hug them or meet them every day, but you do need to be together with them, and at least in thought. And sometimes also getting together can also help. Like, for example, before COVID, we used to have an annual retreat for Kabbalah. In the last year we had it, well, in 2019 we had it in the Pocono Springs in America, just outside of New York, a few hours out of New York. Beautiful nature, and we connected there for 3 days, and it was amazing. And we had lessons and workshops, and at night we did a bonfire, and we went for walks, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. Is that physical connection necessary for spirituality? It supports it in a way that it also helps. You could say it's like it's getting our body, our physical body, on our side. We're giving it some kind of pleasure from fulfillment, from connection, from physical connection even, and in that way it can also support spirituality. Okay. Just a quick one from Sushi Smita, who's writing, I feel I'm addicted to Kabbalah and getting disconnected to my previous world. Yes, Sushi Smita, I understand that. Many people who start studying Kabbalah, they're amazed by what they find. It's a feeling of getting fulfilled for something that your whole life was void, and suddenly you find fulfillment, and it's beautiful and it's amazing. But it is important to not detach yourself from your external world. I don't know if you have a family or if you have children. If you do, if you don't, doesn't matter. I mean, if you have a job, I guess you need to keep living also in this world. I won't elaborate on it now, but also all of these external things, they have a place in our spiritual development. Kabbalah say a person has to work and he has to have a family, etc., etc. Although in our times, to an extent, it's changed. The requirements have changed. No one's asking you if you're married, and there's no such restriction like that or such limitation. But it was like that in the past. And there is a reason why there are corporeal frameworks that we are in. And we need to maintain them even when we study Kabbalah. So this is not just to you, Sushi Smita, it's to any of you who recently found the wisdom and now you want to tell everyone that they have to come and study Kabbalah. And when they won't listen, then you think they don't get it and you want to explain it even more, and then they still don't get it and you don't understand how can they not get it. It's very simple. Their point hasn't yet awakened. They're not yet turning into a butterfly. They're still a caterpillar, and you're talking to them about a new state, about this evolution inside, and they don't get it. They're still a caterpillar. So what do you want from them? So leave them alone. The best thing you can do is maybe give them a link, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And that's pretty much it. Not much more. There's no coercion in spirituality. And the reason why there is no, because you can't coerce someone in spirituality. You simply can't. You can try all you want, but you might be getting the opposite result. You might be pushing them away. So stick to whatever responsibilities you have in this world, and focus on evolving spiritually, and you'll see how these, later on in your development, you'll see how these things connect. Let's see what else we get. Okay, slightly slanted sleuth is asking, does know thyself hold any weight in the Kabbalah mindset? I'm not sure what you refer to by know thyself, but if I don't know if it's some kind of expression, which maybe I don't know, but I'll just respond to it, what it literally is, know thyself. Know thyself is one of the main elements in the study of Kabbalah, because what you need to know is your true nature. You need to know your nature in full. Right now, only a tiny layer of what your nature is revealed to you. And every time you start correcting on a certain level, then you reveal another layer of yourself. So knowing yourself is an integral part of developing every time. It's basically identifying your true desire, which is naturally in order to receive, for itself, and changing its intention in order to bestow. So without knowing yourself, you cannot do that. So let's see what else. Patricia is asking, does feeling pleasure in the study of Kabbalah bestow pleasure to the Creator? I don't know, Patricia. You'll have to ask the Creator, but I can say that exerting, yearning to increase connection, spiritual connection that is, which can be through studying in a lesson, even now, reading a Kabbalistic text, because basically all these actions are actions of increasing connection to this force, even if it's directly now to other people, or if it's not, this act of wanting to be more connected to the Creator, that definitely brings pleasure to the Creator. Okay. Ooh, we're almost out of time. Let's see. Okay, Francine Zabawa is asking, and this will be the last question for today. I recently heard that we live in the spaces between the connections. Is that between each other, or is it also between things as well? It's actually between desires, not between each other physically, and not between things physically, because as we said, there is no spirituality clothed in atomic particles, in particles of this world. There is only spirituality attained on a higher level, on the causal level of reality. It's the level of forces, of intentions and desires, and that's where we live. Our physical body lives wherever it lives. I live in Israel, you live wherever you live. But where our thoughts live, where our intention lives, that can be in the connection, which is a spiritual connection, not a physical one. So I think that's it. I mean, yep. Unfortunately, I'm just looking at the questions. I see there are still many more questions. So if you have more questions, then write them in the chat and I'll address them later in the video. I'll respond to them, and maybe it will give thoughts for future topics as well for this session. And that's it for today. So if you enjoyed the session, please like, please subscribe. And that's basically it. So today in Kabbalah Explained Simply, we spoke about what is the connection between the body and the soul. I'm Gil Shear. I was really happy to be here. Thank you for attending and asking great questions and bringing your desire. So that's it. Until next week. See you then.